Hello, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on your location. This is Leadership Talk with Adegoke, the 55th episode. And I'm so privileged to be here once again with my friend and my sister, Yvonne Johnson. We're going to be looking at leadership and strategy. Yes, leadership and strategy. This amazing lady is going to be adding so much value uh, on this session. I'm so delighted and excited. I've known her from way back through her dad, and now we're showing up massively all over the world. I'm sure our listeners would enjoy this session. So, how are you today, my friend?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me. I really excited to be
Okay,
here.
excellent, excellent. Now, tell us, who is Yvonne? Yvonne Johnson.
Oh wow, good question. Well, thank you again for having me. Today, Yvonne runs a fintech. I'm the co-founder of a fintech called Indicina. But before I started Indicina, I led the strategy team of a large West African bank, and my portfolio covered all of their Africa businesses, both bank and non-bank. But my background is actually in technology. I started my career in tech. And then after an MBA, I moved into financial services. Initially, I was doing investment banking in New York. And then I moved back home about 2009 to join the bank. The bank was a large legacy bank, and there was a bold transformation that they were going to pull off. And so I came in and joined that team. And I was there for almost a decade before leaving to start a fintech.
Wow, awesome, awesome. So, how did you get into leadership?
Good question. Good question. I feel like when one thinks about their careers, we all start as individual contributors.
Yeah.
So you have skill sets that you learn, maybe based on interest, maybe based on curiosity. And as an individual contributor, your main goal is to be just very good at that task and that skill and honing that skill.
Yeah.
And for me, there's always been one of the guiding principles that I've always had is intellectual curiosity. And over time, I remember when I started my career in technology, and it was a software company, and I was a software engineer for them. But the sales guys used to pull me along on their sales calls. And so that led to a
Good.
curiosity as to, what was it that the software, what problem was the software solving for them? What
Solving.
was the
Yeah.
pain point? Yeah. So that was a curiosity. And so for me, that's always been the guiding principle. And I think with the leadership over time, it was also then a desire to be able to give back to other people in terms of teaching people everything that I know, and really guiding them as well into their career goals. And so over
Awesome.
the years, as you start to get good as an individual contributor, I rose up the ranks into more leadership roles. The role that I'm currently at is probably kind of my biggest to date. And that was, again, just really a desire to solve this big problem that I had seen and wanting to build something from the ground up. So that's kind of
Wow.
what led to my current leadership position.
Wow. Awesome. I want to celebrate you. My first impression, of you was when you spoke on the platform. Um,
Yes, yes, yes.
it was
Thank you.
amazing. You were just fascinating. I mean, I just want you to share, one or two nuggets from your session there. I mean, what were you trying to? Was talking about the future of the continent. The tech founder. Yeah. Can you just drop some nuggets from your?
Sure, sure. Sure. So the topic of my talk at the platform was about the tech founder being the future of the continent.
Yeah.
I have a technology background. My first degree is in computer science, and I've always been very fascinated and a very firm believer in the power of technology to improve humanity.
Yeah.
And so I've always kept in touch. I mean, I had a technology background. I started my career in tech. Even though after the MBA I moved into financial services, I was always very kind of, curious about technology, and stayed in that field. And, today I run a fintech. And one of the things that I've seen, here on the continent, I mean, in Nigeria, here, there's a lot of challenges. I mean,
Okay.
for the last couple of decades, there's been a high dependence on kind of natural resources,
Yeah.
and that has been what we've tied our economy to. But there's been another set of resources that we have in abundance, and that is even more sustainable. And so my talk was really as to say that there really needs to be a focus on human capital, as a more sustainable resource, to peg our fortunes on. And specifically technology in the last couple of years, we've also shown that this human capital that we have, has a strong affinity for technology.
That's right.
In the last couple of years, there's been a lot of technology accelerators that have come up, and they have really shown the world that talent in Nigeria, they're very good. The software developers that we're grooming in Nigeria are very good. And when you put that together with the current high demand for technology talent, the pandemic has really accelerated digitization, and so there's a lot of software that has to be built, and so there's high demand for technology talent. And so when you put that together, it's really a huge opportunity for us to really ride this wave, show the world how great this human capital we are, and really take advantage for the high demand for technology talent.
Wow, amazing. That's quite powerful. I just want to celebrate you.
Thank you so much.
And that's very instructive, because we have a lot of people that studied abroad, and it's not trickling down in terms of the impact into the Nigerian environment. We have people that studied in Yale, Harvard, Kellogg's. My brother-in-law also studied in Kellogg's. He's also in banking.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So, I studied abroad as well. But it seems the Nigerian state, we have not really been able to have our feet on the ground, as it were, properly. There's so much negative news all over the place. So, and the more good news that we have, of course, what the example of the fintech space, what is happening there. And thank you for adding so much content and value in that space. Now, I want us to look at, why we're here, leadership and strategy. Yesterday, I was listening to a gentleman, and he was talking about planning, strategic planning, the importance of planning, in leadership. What's your understanding of leadership, and what's your understanding of strategy, and what's the where did they meet? Where's the fusion?
Yeah, it's a good question, and the summary is that strategy just really enables leadership. When I think about leadership, and I think about it in my role as an entrepreneur and as a CEO, my primary goal as a leader is really to carry the vision. At the end of the day, with leaders, you're tasked with solving a problem.
Problem,
And
yes.
the idea is that in solving this problem, you would really make a dent on humanity. There would be a number of people, a set of people who would have kind of a major impact and an improvement in their lives, if you're able to execute properly. And so as a leader, one of the things is that, you really carry the vision, right? So you're no longer an individual contributor, like I talked about in the past. It's now really saying that you carry the vision.
That's right.
And in communicating that vision, you are inspiring a team, to get to that point. So that's really what leadership is, and it sounds very simple, but it's incredibly hard, right? Because there's a lot of things that you have to get right. No, it is. So if you come from that point and say, okay, leadership is around carrying the vision, and it's around motivating the team to execute that vision, right? Because as a single person, you can't do it all. And, that's the first challenge of leadership, that you have the vision in your head, you carry it in your head, but you cannot execute by yourself, right? You have to inspire, you have to assemble a team, inspire the team, to get to that point. And then when you now then talk about strategy, like I said, at the very simple, at the very simple level, strategy is about problem solving. It's to say that, yes, you have this vision, yes, you have this goal, this destination that you want to get to, and strategy is about how do you get there, right? And how do you get there with the set of resources that you have? There's trade-offs you have to make, in problem solving. There are things that you would do and there's things that you would not do. And so that's really where they intersect. It's to say that the leader carries a vision and, the destination, and the strategy really is how to get there. And strategy, and I'm sure we'll talk about it, there's different nuances to it, right? Because external resources matter in terms of strategy. I mean, if, for example, you have a destination you want to get to and it's just a question of, financial resources, right? The strategy that you would devise if you had $1 million for the task is different from if you had only $10,000 and you had to, compromise, right? The times and the seasons matter, right? You can be constrained by policy depending on the type of industry that you're in, right? So strategy is trying to say that, look, how do I solve this problem within the constraints that are around me?
Okay, awesome. That's really deep. And so, who would you say is a strategic leader, as opposed to a visionary leader?
Wow, that's a very good question. If you go into the technology industry, and again, it's a favorite industry of mine. When I think about kind of Jeff Bezos and Amazon, and I know he's stepped down. I see him. I see him as both, but I think for this purposes, I would lean more towards his strategic leadership. In the sense that, for example, today when you say the word Amazon, most people would say it's an e-commerce company. They sell goods online, right? But again, if you actually look under the hood in their financials, there's a big part of their business that comes from their cloud business, right? Their AWS cloud business, and that's really about strategy. I mean, if you really learn about how that business came about to be, it was a very strategic move on their part to be able to set up this new business and now become this dominant force in the cloud business. And the cloud business is so far away from e-commerce, right?
Wow.
They're so opposed. So when I think about all of that, and the more that I kind of learn about him and his business and whatnot, he's definitely somebody that I could say is a strategic leader. Now, when you talk about kind of, visionary leadership, again, just very good question. And there's so many examples, but I think one that would come to me is, President Obama. He's definitely one that you can tell has, he does a good job of, keeping that destination in his mind and forming and having and carrying that vision in his head. And he does very well, communicating that and, like I said, inspiring people towards that leadership, right? It's less so about, the hands-on execution or maybe even the details around it, but it's more so, look, this is a vision and, dare to imagine that we can get to this place, right? And I think that's something that he did very well.
Wow, awesome. That's amazing. If you're just joining us or listening to, you're going to listen to the replay. I have with me Yvonne Johnson. She's a fintech, leader and an entrepreneur, and she has acquired so much expertise, in corporate banking, strategy. And so we're looking at leadership and strategy. This is Leadership Talk with Adegoke, the 55th episode. Yes, the 55th episode. Now, I just want to find out, now what's the consequence or what's the challenge if a leader is not strategic, has no strategy, proper strategy? Today you're saying this, and tomorrow there's a recalibration, and so there's no clear roadmap. What's the consequence of that on the business?
Yeah,
or the organization?
Yeah, it's a question, and one of the biggest consequences would just be frustration and demoralization among the team. Because like I said, one of the first things that you realize as a leader is that you can't do it all yourself. And in fact, you're not even measured by how much. In fact, let me put it this way: if as a leader, you're doing a lot of the kind of hands-on work, right? Maybe more than kind of 50-60%. It's a sign of kind of poor leadership, right? Because really, leadership is about inspiring a team. It's around carrying that vision in your head, being able to properly communicate it to the team. And then motivate them, to an outcome. And so when you have kind of a leader that has kind of no strategy or poor strategy, what that means is, again, remember, leadership is you're trying to solve a problem, and it's your.
Wow. I think the
plan to people.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead. Sorry. Yeah, go ahead. Can you hear me? Yes, can you come back in? Yes. I think there's a challenge with the sound. So my guest will be coming back in shortly. I've been on the platform with Yvonne Johnson, and we've been looking at leadership and strategy. And we're looking at, a situation where a leader has no strategy. What's the impact of that on the organization? And she's saying that, oftentimes you have an organization where a leader is just trying to do most of the things, and could find herself in a situation where, the organization is not running effectively. So leadership is about delegation. Leadership is about showing up and providing the enabling environment, for the business to thrive. And so it's been a good session. I mean, I'm sure she'll be joining us very shortly. Maybe it's a Wi-Fi, but this is leadership and the strategy. Leadership and strategy. Yes, she's back. Wow. Right, you're back.
Apologies.
That's why we're here. We're looking at strategy, and we're talking about a situation where, a leader can't follow through,
Yes.
Yes.
So my point is that, with kind of poor strategy or no strategy, the first thing that happens is demoralization within the team, because there's nothing more frustrating than feeling like, look, we're all trying to get somewhere, but we don't know what we're doing, right? So that would be one of the first things. But having said that, there are some situations, and again, it's really about communicating to the team and bringing them along, right? Because at the end of the day, every one of us has, a desire for greater expression. We want to make sure that our work is meaningful and we're making an impact. There are some situations, for example, within a startup context where one of the things about startups is that innovation is in their DNA, and so it's speed. So they iterate very fast with what they're doing, right? Maybe they have a product idea and they iterate very fast in terms of what the product should do and the features, right? And in those kind of situations, it's normal to say that, look, we try something, we experiment with it, maybe it doesn't quite work, we pick something else, right? Now it might seem like it might appear on the surface that there is poor planning and strategy, but no, it's just within the context. But at the end of the day, if you're communicating properly with the team, that's always very helpful. And so that's one of the things with kind of poor strategy and no strategy, especially if it's not communicated to the team. It very easily leads to frustration. And with everything, we talked about it, leadership is challenging. The idea is that this problem that you're trying to solve, this destination you're trying to take people to, it's tough to get there. It's probably something that nobody else has done. So inspiring and motivating people on the journey is always very important.
Awesome. Now, I just want to find out, how can, a business perform better than competition? What strategy that can you implement even now with COVID? For example, you are an entrepreneur, you're a startup. What strategy can you put in place for you to, just outshine competition?
Yeah. It's a good question, and remember I said that strategy also has to it has to be done within context, within the seasons, right? Today we're recording a podcast, and we're on a device, maybe a phone or a laptop, right? And there's so much technology that allows us to be able to do it. But if this was maybe 20, 30 years ago, we would have had to go to a special location and use special equipment to do it, right? So strategy is not in isolation. It's within the context. And so again, we had this pandemic. It came upon us, and it really kind of upended and just changed everything as we know it. And so, and a lot of people were affected, right? So if you're a business and you're saying that, look, how do I now compete, right? You probably have to modify your strategy. One of the things that, any business should be thinking about right now is digitization, because one of the things that, the pandemic forced us to do is that we then had to kind of reduce, human interaction, right? So a lot of us couldn't go to the bank anymore. It meant that we had to do online banking. If you're a business, for example, and you had a physical location, more often than not, people are not able to come to your location as much as possible. So then you then have to think, how can I reach my customers? So digitization then starts to become part of any strategy, right? It starts to become part of your marketing strategy. If you relied on people to kind of walk into your store, or if you relied on paper flyers, now you have to work on, digital marketing. You have to be able to market your products, your services online to attract people. Again, if you relied on people to walk into your store to buy your goods, now you have to have an option where they can go online and buy the same goods, right? So that means you set up a storefront and whatnot, right? Payments, right? Before you probably relied on people to come into the store and pay by cash, you have to digitize. So digitization would be a core aspect of any strategy for anybody in a post-COVID world, right? Because the human interaction has been limited, and there's a lot more digital interactions going on.
Awesome. That's a good one. Now, I want to talk about strategic planning. One of the things about a strategic leader is planning ahead. With COVID, it caused a lot of disruptions. Those plans, we had to just rip it apart and have new plans, and it's an ongoing crisis. Sometimes you find organizations have a 5-year plan, quarterly plan. So what's the role of planning now? How effective is planning?
Yeah, it's very effective, and it's very important. Because again, you're talking about a team, so it's more than one person. Even your strategy would have different parts to it, right? You're talking of, you also talked about it, there's a duration, right? When I was in the bank, our strategic planning cycles were 3 years, right? So every 3 years, we would sit down and say, what is our strategy over the next, 3 years? What do we want to do? What did we would look back in the past? What did we do well? What did we not do well? Right? And for us, we felt that good enough. It wasn't too short that you're constantly spinning your wheels, and it's not too long where events can overtake. Now you have your annual review sessions, but that's separate from kind of your strategic planning cycle. With me being a startup, of course, strategic planning cycles are much shorter. It's not going to be 3 years because things move very fast, right? So it's much shorter. But the whole idea is that with planning is, again, coming to the team and agreeing on, this strategy that, agreeing on what the right strategy is, look in the past and see what happens, what you did right, what you did wrong,
Yeah.
make a bit of projections about the future, right? Where are things going, and you look at different indicators, right?
Yeah.
So that planning is important, because that's what you're going to then use to document kind of the strategy and phase it out. But even with strategic planning, it's also very good to review those plans periodically,
Okay.
whether it's quarterly, whether it's annually, because you always have to go back and say, look, our assumptions, are they still relevant?
Yeah.
Because there's assumptions that you would have made. There's projections you would have made. Are we still on track? These things that we said are going to happen, are they still going to happen? And so would our strategy still be relevant? So regardless of kind of the tenor of your strategic plans, it's always good to have periodic reviews.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. Wow. Now I want to look at, talent. Talent, when you plan strategy and, have huge ambitious plans. And for example, in Nigeria, there's been a lot of movement. People are having to relocate abroad, and it's disrupting plans of even the big organizations. People are looking for better opportunities. Can you speak to that? The challenges of having talent migrating and leaving organizations. How do you do with that as a strategic leader? Yes.
Yeah. It's an important question, because at the end of the day, I mean, human capital, people, resources, they're so important. Organization, businesses, they're living, breathing beings. Yes, you have a vision and whatnot. And remember, like I said, you can't do it all yourself. And so you need a team. So people are incredibly important to any, journey that you're going on.
Yeah.
And so you always have to have a pulse on what the trends are, right, as it affects your people, right? And remember, with every organization, there are different functions within the organization, your technology people, your finance people, and whatnot. And at the end of the day, we also, you can't forget we as human beings, and what drives us and what makes us what inspires us, because you always have to keep a pulse on that, right? There's nothing worse than having somebody on your team that's not inspired, that's not motivating. They can't be productive. And one of your key responsibilities as a leader is really to just kind of harness this team and bring out from them, even things that they didn't know are in themselves. And so you're right. We now have, again, a lot of it having to do with the pandemic, working remotely. People have now kind of opened up to, different working styles, and that's also triggering. People are really kind of reviewing what do they want, what is important to them. It's no longer the status quo of I'm just going to stay at this job, for however long, right? Again, it's back to your kind of planning and strategy and reviewing your strategy. I talked about it frequently. You need to sit down and say, okay, what are some of these trends that are seen that were happening, right? And now you have people saying that, look, we want, one of the key things now is that people are saying, look, we want a more flexible way of working, right? The old way was that I would come into a physical office for 8-9 hours a day, and then I would go back home. And people are saying that, no, I don't want that. I want a more flexible way of working. And that's something that as a leader, you have to be open to. You have to be open to the idea that, people can still be productive, with a flexible working arrangement. And that also then shows a commitment to that individual, a commitment to the well-being of that individual. So it's really, again, about planning and just really looking and saying that, okay, times have changed, and so I also need to adapt my strategy to it.
Wow, this has been a powerful session from an amazing lady speaking to our listeners all over the world, and those that are going to be listening to the replay. I have with me Yvonne Johnson. She's a fintech leader. She's been in the corporate environment, and we're looking at leadership and strategy. If you're on the platform, if you have any questions for Yvonne, just type into the chat if you have any questions for her. This is Leadership Talk with Adegoke, the 55th edition. Now, I just have a few more questions. Now,
Sure.
what would you like to say to that leader out there that is a bit confused as to how to pivot? Uh, for example, I did a lot of in-person trainings before COVID, and all of a sudden things shut down. I had to recalibrate, and one of the ways I, is by showing up on a podcast, and it's worked for me. What would you like to say to a leader out there that is struggling with pivoting?
It's a good question, and it's something that we as leaders struggle with because you're so focused on the destination, um, you're so you're so convinced of your strategy, and
Yeah.
sometimes we get overly emotional about the strategy. Um, but we also should know that curveballs would always come. It's not a question of if they would come; they would always come.
When? Yeah.
Um, things would always happen, right? Maybe you had somebody leave the team unexpectedly and you have to fill in a role. You could wake up and there's a pandemic that just upends everything, right? But your ability as a leader to really be able to adapt to different times and situations, is also very important. It's a skill that
Mm,
you learn over time, but it's
mm,
definitely something that you can't let it deter you. You certainly
right.
can't let it scare you. And pivots are not always bad. You can find that pivots sometimes force you into even better outcomes, right? So that flexibility in execution style,
Mm,
is important, right? Like I said, we all woke up in the pandemic, right? And if you had a strategy that was very
yeah.
reliant on physical interaction, just like you talked about. I mean, training is such an important one. You needed to go to a location, train a set of people for a couple of
Yeah.
hours, right? So embrace the possibilities that changes would have to happen and that you would have to make a pivot, right? But at the end of the day, as a leader, that vision that you carry in your head, right? Yes, you have a strategy about how we get to accomplish this vision, but also be
Mm,
very open that our strategy would change, but we
mm,
still have that vision. We still need to
mm.
kind of keep it in our head and inspire people towards that vision, but just know that sometimes the manner in which we get there would change.
Wow, wow, wow. Yvonne, you've been so amazing on this podcast. I know there's so much coming from your insight. When I looked at your profile, it's intimidating. I mean, for some of us that are just starting off, it's massive. Could you speak to this? Do you have mentors? Who are your mentors? I realized that when you were in uni, you were on the dean's list. You got so many awards and accolades, and you're still showing up. Who are your mentors?
It's a good question. I mean, I have peer mentors, just friends and people that I've known for a very long time.
Yeah,
Not always necessarily kind of in technology and the same field that I am in, but
yeah,
just like I said, one of the things that I really prize and is intellectual curiosity. And so when I
mm,
see that quality in somebody, it's something that I always kind of want to learn from. So a lot of my peer mentors, just kind of friends that I grew up with, is just really being inspired by their intellectual curiosity. And also I'm also very inspired by people that just kind of are self-starters and really challenge themselves with new
yeah.
challenges, right? And so those are the kind of things that I look for. And so when it translates into mentorship, sometimes it's actually just peers of mine, and I see those qualities in them, and it's something that and I admire and I want to learn, and I'm able to latch onto. So they're not also necessarily people that are in the same industry or whatnot, and sometimes they're actually even of
Awesome.
the same age group.
Good, good, good. Well done, fantastic. Now, last question before the last. Would you like to just, in 30 seconds, say something to anyone out there that's going to listen or listening now? Something, that you just inspired to say in 30 seconds?
Good one, yeah. I like this topic of leadership because for the longest time I always thought it was a skill set or a status of kind of, a privileged set of people. But one of the things I just want to really inspire, encourage people about is that, a lot of leadership skills can be learned. I think that desire to want to kind of improve humanity, the desire for change and whatnot, that expression, that desire for a greater expression is all within all of us, right? And so to never see leadership as this thing that, other people can do, but not me, right? A lot of the skills that we talk about with leadership, these are very concrete skills: strategic planning, assembling a team, execution. These are skills that can be learned, right? So that's definitely something that, I want to leave people with. It's not this mystical status that, nobody, only a select few people can, can aspire to. They're definitely skills that you can learn.
Wow. Well, but I just also believe that, leadership is different from entertainment. It's hard work. It's hard work, showing up, providing inspiration, planning, talking about execution, so if you're not ready to follow through, you just find that, you might get frustrated. It's not for cowards. It's not for people that are not determined. And so I'm just so excited, and I'm so thankful for sharing the platform with Yvonne Johnson, showing up massively. Finally, if they want to reach you, our listeners want to reach you, how can they reach you? Your website or your
Oh, good one. Yes. So the startup that I founded is called Indicina. Our website is indicina.co, indicina.co. So definitely you can reach us there.
Okay. Now, Indicina, what does it stand for? Because it sounds very, I know Indiana. Is it Indiana, or is it, where is it the word? Where is it coined from, or is it your family name or something? Or
Yeah. No, it's actually a Latin word that's synonymous with data.
Okay.
A lot of what we do at Indicina is around data and data analytics, and really helping people to draw insights from data. And so we wanted a name that would symbolize that.
Wow. So that's it. The 55th session of Leadership Talk with Adegoke. I've had with me on this session, Leadership and Strategy, my amazing sister, Yvonne Johnson. If you'd like to say thank you to her, she's shown up and she's added so much value. Feel free to put it in the chat, say thank you. And on behalf of myself and the team, Leadership Talk with Adegoke, we just want to thank you for coming. And for the listeners all over the world, thank you for joining us. Have a pleasant day. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.